All right, Nerdy Bones back in the studio. What's up, Nick?
What's up, Keith?
What are we talking about today?
We are
We are
talking about Steve Martin today.
Which is really cool because we've been starting to kind of do full episodes on a specific
Yeah,
topic.
we realized today actually that we have started to do more biographies on people, and we actually really enjoy doing that.
Yes,
a lot.
Yes.
And we kind of realized a little, like really just a half hour ago recording this is like we can actually do a lot of what topics we like with just doing biographies on people.
Yeah, and I'm loving it. Like when we do it, at the end of this month, I'm going to do Robin Williams on this same.
But we're
note.
also doing Genghis Khan before that.
Genghis Khan, dude. I've got so much on the pipe already.
Yeah. We were talking about doing a few more too eventually.
Yeah. Like the more we go into this, we're kind of hitting our stride.
But one thing we really love doing is the comedian one. We did
Kennison.
We did Sam Kennison, Mitch
Hicks.
Hedberg, and Bill Hicks.
Yeah.
And if you haven't checked those out, fucking check them out.
Yeah.
We actually really love those episodes a lot.
Yeah.
But this is a monthly thing we're going to be doing as a comedian every month.
Right.
And this month it's Steve Martin.
That's right.
And I alluded to last month, actually, I want to do Steve Martin, but I want to do him justice.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a big one for me because I'm like, I did a lot, and I'm just going to say it right now. This is going to be a two-parter, and this is the very first two-part Nerdy Bones episode we're ever doing.
That's true. Yeah.
So
get it rolling, brother.
So without further ado, this is Steve Martin.
Steve Martin.
Now this doesn't happen very often, but about 3 weeks ago I met a girl, and she was real nice, and she invited me to her apartment. So I went over there, and she had the best pussy I have ever seen. Oh, now come on! I'm talking about her cat. Now that makes me sick.
I'm talking about her cat.
No, you can't say anything anymore that people don't take it dirty, and I'm sorry, that disgusts me. That cat was the best fuck I ever had.
That is such an intelligent joke. That's an intelligent joke, dude.
Yeah. Oh, well, that was the way Steve Martin was, and that was actually from his comedy album, A Wild and Crazy Guy.
I'm just a wild and crazy guy.
Which I think actually I read earlier. It got like double platinum, and it got like a Grammy for like best comedy album of the year.
Really?
It was dude. He was a fucking rock star, man.
I didn't know that.
But and I didn't mention this before, but I'm gonna say this is when I'm talking about Steve Martin, this is only really going to be about his stand-up comedy for the most part. I'm going to get into a little bit of his but I'm really getting into his early career. But pretty much I'm going to stop it when it gets up to when he started his movie career and he quit stand-up. And I want to say I got pretty much every bit of information from his book, Born Standing Up.
I was about to ask, what's your source material?
Yeah, it's a book called Born Standing Up, and it was written by Steve Martin. And actually, the whole book is about his comedy career.
Okay.
And I'm going to say too, I'm going to read a lot of it pretty much verbatim.
Oh, so there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, so hopefully no one tries to flag me. The company who published this. Who was it? Let's see. Scribner published this.
Well, we're putting it out there so you guys can experience it.
And also, if you are interested in knowing more about him, I mean, definitely pick this book up. It's like I've read I'll say I've read half of it, and that's why. But I got to the point where I'm like, okay, I feel comfortable stopping it at this point. Mm-hmm. And then so next week will be the second part, and I'm going to go into more. But I'm using his book because it's just really well written
by him,
and it gives it gives a good description and is written well of his early career. So I just wanted to go with that.
Yeah.
So anyway, without further ado,
let's rock and roll.
I'll start getting anything. Was it Steve Martin or Steve Glenn Martin or Stephen Glenn Martin, I should say.
I didn't know his middle name was Glenn.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. He was born a poor black child. Sorry, I just had to throw that in. That was the opening line from The Jerk.
Yeah.
Which he co-wrote.
Watch The Jerk if you haven't.
Yeah, The Jerk is a fucking great movie. And he was born on August 14th, 1945 in Waco, Texas. And his parents
he was born in Waco?
Yeah, he was born in Waco. Yeah, I know, right? And his parents were Mary Lee Stewart and Glenn Vernon Martin. And he has a sister named Melinda.
Okay.
I saw on Wikipedia he had a brother named Fred, but I don't really seen that. So let's see, where am I going with this from there? Sorry, I have a lot of notes, and then I got the book. So he's raised in Inglewood, and then later in our Garden Grove, California, and from there, I'm actually going to start reading from the book.
Yeah.
Actually,
Here we go.
So his father wanted to be an actor when Steve Martin was like first growing up. He's like, so yeah, like I said, I'm going to start reading a lot of this from the book, pretty much word for word. And so my father wanted to be, or his father wanted to be an actor, and his mother hated the Texas heat. So in 1950, when he was 5 years old, his family moved from Waco to Hollywood. And to maintain family ties, they motored between Texas and California several times over the next few years. And on these road trips, he was introduced to comedy. This is at age 5. And as evening closed around us, his father would turn on the car radio, and his sister Melinda and him nestled in the back seat, and they would listen to Bob Hope, Adam Costello, and Amos and Andy. And their favorite thing at that night was the Jack Benny program.
Oh, dude, Jack Benny. I
actually don't know anything about Jack Benny.
Yeah, I've listened to Jack Benny myself.
So, and he said listening to comedy was one of the few things that his family did together. So he'd listen to these shows, but he didn't really realize it until he was an adult that he was interested in show business. You know, at the time when he was a kid, 5 years old, he just kind of enjoyed what he was listening to it. So a few months later, they moved from Hollywood to Inglewood, California, and lived in a small bungalow on Venice Way, directly across from Highland Elementary School. This was the site of his first stage performance, where in kindergarten he appeared as Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Oh my God! Well, he actually used that in a couple of his skits.
Did he?
Yeah, being Rudolph. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, I remember seeing that on Saturday Night Live.
Really?
Like he was Rudolph more than once. So they kind of.
Well, that's one thing people don't realize, or a lot of people think, or I think people know now, but a lot of people think that Steve Martin was a cast member on SNL. He never was.
Yeah, he was just there.
He just hosted them a lot because in the early days they just couldn't really get people to host.
Yeah.
And that's why that's really where he.
That's where
kind of took off.
Well, like you think about like his big skit on Saturday Night Live was with Billy Crystal. Or just a couple wild and crazy.
It was Billy Crystal. That was a.
It was Billy Crystal.
No, it was with Belushi. Belushi.
No, dude.
Who's the guy who does the Crystal Skull vodka?
I don't know what you're
Dan Aykroyd.
No,
he did. Yeah, he did it with Dan Aykroyd.
We're going to have to Google this.
All right,
because like
you can Google it while I do it. But it was Dan Aykroyd. He did it
the big skit. I remember him.
Well, Two Wild and Crazy Guys with
we're
Dan
Too
Aykroyd.
Wild and Crazy, and it was Billy Crystal.
All right, it was.
I'll look it up while you're talking.
Yeah. So he was 5 years old when television entered the household. A plastic black box wired to a rooftop antenna sat in his living room, and on it appeared what had to be the world's longest continuous showing of B westerns. Yeah, and he got to be really he got really into westerns. Like he'd watch them all.
Well, I understand.
He loved
that.
it.
Yeah.
You know, and the TV also brought into his life two appealing characters named Laurel and Hardy, who he found clever and gentle in contrast to the Three Stooges, who were blatant and violent. Laurel and Hardy's work, already 30 years old, has survived decades with no hint of cobwebs. They were also touching and affectionate, and he believed this is where he got his idea that jokes are funniest when played upon oneself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah,
like, he didn't like the Three Stooges.
Well, yeah. Well, you know how much I love the Three Stooges.
I know.
I love the Three Stooges.
So he would he would memorize
Billy Crystal.
Okay. All right, I was wrong.
Continue.
So he would memorize Red Skelton's routines about two pooping seagulls, Gertrude and Heathcliff, or his bit about how different people walk through a rain puddle, and perform them the next day during Wednesday morning sharing time at his grade school.
Say it again.
So he pretty much he memorized a routine from Red Skelton.
Okay.
And he'd go and he'd perform it in front of
That's awesome.
in front of his
That's
classmates.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's fucking awesome.
So his father, Glenn Martin, died in 1997 at age 83. And afterward, his friends told him about how much they loved him. They told how enjoyable he was, how outgoing he was, how funny and caring he was. And he was surprised by these descriptions because the number of funny or caring words that had been passed between him and his father were few. He eventually saved his vibrant personality for those outside. He evidently saved his caring personality for people outside the family. And when when Steve was 7 or 8 years old, he suggested that him and his dad play catch in front of the yard. Or his dad suggests that. And this offer to spend time together was so rare that Steve was confused about what he was supposed to do. Like we tossed the ball, he said we tossed the ball back and forth with cheerless formality.
That's interesting because that was like so how old was Steven at that point?
I think he said 6 or 7.
Yeah, like that would have been,
or 7 or 8. Sorry.
Well, that would have been like the 50s.
Yeah.
It
was in the 50s.
So that's like what he did.
He was born in 45, so
yeah, that's what he
early
did.
50s.
Yeah, that's what he did.
But yeah, that's just the way. But it's like the fact that he heard all this stuff about his dad from all these people after he died, and he's like, my dad never was like that with me. It was like, he was one thing when he was with his family, and he was another person when he was with his friends.
Right.
It was that kind of thing.
Well, like I grew up, and like you and I both grew up in the late 80s, early 90s. The only thing my dad did with me, because my dad was a martial artist, was fucking fight.
Yeah. I remember playing like catch with my dad.
Yeah, I never had that.
My dad would always take time to like teach me stuff, especially like working on cars or something.
Yeah, like
something he was into.
I never had that. It was here, son. I'm gonna throw a punch at you. What do you do? Yeah. But that's continue.
Yeah. So in their house, his mother was called Mama, but his dad was always called Glenn.
So he called his dad by his name.
Called his dad Glenn. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the kind of guy. And I want to preface by saying this whole episode, and the next episode is even. What I like to do with what I talk about and with anybody is I like to paint a picture of who they were.
There you go.
And how they became what they became. Their roots and everything, and like what really influenced them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
So as a young woman, his mother, Mary Lee Martin, had a sense of fun that was rarely displayed later in her life. She was an avid seamstress and made clothes for them, and that she'd copy from movie magazines. She loved fashion. And starstruck, she proudly saved a newspaper a photo of herself in a theater, see behind the popular actor at the time, Van Johnson.
Did you say theater?
Yeah. Why was it? Megan gives me the same shit about that. So you say theater wrong. Sorry. Whatever.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
God damn you. So later at age 45, she even managed to get some modeling jobs at local department stores. She dreamed of a glamorous life, and Steve had always assumed the reason that his father ended up selling into real estate instead of pursuing acting was that his mother had pressured him to get a real job. But when she was older and he asked his mom about it, she said, "Oh no, I wanted your father to be a star."
Oh wow.
Yeah, and she went on to say that it was he who hadn't followed his dream, which she was talking about his dad.
Oh, okay.
So he was the one who decided not to pursue it. And so his mother was the daughter of a strict Baptist matriarch who barred dancing, dating, and card playing, and she must have viewed her marriage to my theatrically inclined father as an exciting alternative.
Card playing seems real specific.
Yeah. Well, that's what he put. That's what he wrote. So it was a theatrically inclined father as an exciting alternative to small town life. But my father overpowered her easily, intimidated her personality, and she only escaped from one repressive situation into another. That's the way he viewed it.
Oh, wow. Really?
His mother went from, being the...
Like Steve saw his mother, like, repressed.
Yeah.
Is like the word I was trying to use.
Yeah, pretty much.
But he saw her, like, overcoming and then moving forward.
Yeah.
Am I wrong in saying that?
No, not at all.
Like, he saw her, like, have a...
Kind of a... She just went from one shitty situation to another kind of thing.
But she always came out on top, is from what it sounds like.
Well, she always loved your kids.
Well, that's what matters.
Is what I get from everything.
Yeah, that's what matters.
So his father had a resonant voice, and he liked to sing around the house. He emulated Bing Crosby and Dean Martin, and his mother loved it when he crooned the popular songs of the day.
Oh, I know that word.
I love that word, crooned.
I know that
It's
word.
such an old word, man.
Well, like crooning is like...
Well, crooner, you think when you think of crooner, you think of like Sinatra, Dean Martin.
Exactly.
Yeah. So she was a good piano player and kept encouraging Steve to sing for her. And he's supposed to find out to find out if she kind of tried to find out if he inherited his father's genes or his father's voice, I should say. But Steve was shy at home and kept refusing.
That's amazing to think about, like Steve Martin being shy.
Yeah, like I said, this is probably around 8 years old, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm thinking at this point.
The other day, like, not to derail, but the other day at work, I was thinking about like his work on the Pink Panther.
Yeah.
And he's like, the scene that is in my head is like where he's going through customs, and like he's playing Clouseau.
Yeah.
And he's never been to America before, and he's experiencing hamburgers. He eats hamburgers. So I have dim burgers in my pocket. It's just funny because like there's these drug dogs on him, and he's like, "What's in your pocket?" And he goes, "Dim burger." Sorry, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
So he was shy at home and kept refusing. But one day after her final push, he agreed, and he went to the garage where he could practice "America the Beautiful" in private. A few hours.
America the Beautiful.
America the Beautiful. A few hours later, he was ready, and she got the sheet music and played it on the piano. And
so he sang that.
Well, let me continue.
Okay, shut up.
He stood before her, and at downbeat, what came out of his mouth was an 8-year-old boy's attempt to initiate his dad's deep baritone.
Oh,
so he was 8 at the time. So I was right about that. Yeah. So he plunged into his voice down as low as it could go, and began to croon the song like D. Martin might have done it on a baseball game. And his mother, as much as she wanted to continue, collapsed in laughter and could not stop.
Oh shit! She laughed at him.
She laughed at him because he was trying to. She was trying to intimidate his father. Intimidate
fucked,
or what was the word?
Not intimidate. It's
Why are we forgetting this?
Well, there's a word here that we're looking at. She
Yeah.
tried to make him not want to follow through with this.
Yeah, he was trying to imitate.
Yeah.
I can't believe we forgot that. So he was trying to imitate his father with a voice, but he made her laugh instead.
That's fucked, man.
Yeah. And she just couldn't stop. Her eyes reddened with tears of affection and control she tried to exert over herself made her laugh even more. And with her forearm falling on piano keys, she tried to hide her face from me.
Dude, that sucks.
And filling out smaller room with laughter and dissonance. Like she explained as kindly as she could that it was charming, not ridiculous, but he was forever. But as he put it, I was forever after reluctant to sing in public.
Dude.
Well, come on, he got over
His mother made fun
He got
of
over
him.
it. I think he got over it. So
think about him playing on stage with the guitar and. Oh no! Yeah, the banjo. And
I'm gonna get into his playing with the banjo.
Okay.
So next I'm gonna get more into his magic actually. And one thing that's a lot of people know about is he did a lot of magic.
Yeah, I know this about him.
Well, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but some people, yeah.
Well, he did a lot of shows like doing magic routines.
Yeah, I'm gonna get into a lot of that actually.
Okay, cool.
So having been given a few store-bought magic tricks by an uncle, he developed an interest in conjuring and felt a glow of specialness as the sole possessor, at least locally, of its secrets. His meager repertoire of tricks, quintupled with his parents, gave him a maestro magic set. A cherished Christmas.
Well, what I remember looking at is they actually got a magic set in the mail. Mm-hmm. Am I right?
Well, his parents gave him this as a Christmas gift.
They ordered it. And so he got like a magic set in the mail that was
Maisto. It's actually called Maisto. Mysto.
And it was like your rudimentary tricks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So the apparatus was flimsy and the instructions indecipherable, and a few of the effects were deeply uninteresting. So out of a box of 10 tricks, only 4 were useful, but even 4 tricks required practice. So he stood in front of the mirror for hours mastering the linking rings or the ball and vase.
Linking rings. That's not easy. That's not easy.
So his first shows were performed in his third grade class using an upturned apple crate for his magic table.
Oh, that's dope.
Right?
Dude, we have not grown up during that, and that's cool as fuck. Dude.
Well, this is way before the age of YouTube, of course, where any kid can just record something on their cell phone and upload it to YouTube.
Yeah.
You actually, you get to know how you did by the, your schoolmates, like
people talking,
classmates, like
people talking.
You know, actually like watching you and giving you feedback. You know,
Yeah.
laughing or be like this.
It wasn't like a YouTube upload.
No,
Yeah.
it was a lot different then. You know, but anyway, so to get back, so his father was a generous one in the family, which is crazy to think. So he's like his. Well, here's where I'm going with this. So his mother promoted penny pinching habits, and lingering from her Great Depression childhood, and her practice of scrimping on household heat nearly froze him and his sister into statues in the winter.
Oh wow! Well, that's from the book.
Yeah, and he annoyed his mother on occasion. I think his father, he annoyed his mother by occasionally lending whatever little leftover money they had to his dad's friends.
So they would lend out money?
Yeah, well, his dad would. He'd lend out
okay.
money, and his mom was like super
She was pissed
frugal
about it.
person. Like, don't we need what money we have? And his dad was like, well, my friend needs help, so
That would be me though. Like,
yeah. But when his mother would object, his father would remind her that they had been able to buy their first house because of the generosity of a family friend.
oh, there you
And
go.
I don't know if I said before, but his dad was selling real estate.
Yeah, well, you
at
did
the time.
mention that. Yeah.
You
yeah.
know. Sorry.
Poop.
So he loved comic books, especially the funny ones like Little Lulu
Oh shit!
and Uncle Scrooge.
What? Really?
Yeah. Uh huh.
And I actually know that book. I know
Yeah,
that
he was.
book.
He said he was in heaven, and his
Well, that's where DuckTales comes from.
yeah. Well, his father actually financed his subscription to these, and he said, I ended up after 1 year owing him $5. and he's like, though he never dogged me for it, I'm sure he kept his debt on the books to teach me the value of money. And he's like, as the balance grew, I was nauseated whenever I thought of it. And one birthday, he forgave my debt, and I soared with relief. And this is actually a really interesting thing to me and very important, I think, and probably something really most people don't know unless they read this book, is he said, in my adult life, I have never bought anything on credit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
How cool is that?
I can't say.
And I'll get into
I
later.
can't say that I've
well,
been there.
I'm going to get into later when he goes to college too, and I think he paid for college by working jobs. You know, by doing comedy and everything and acting.
No credit.
No credit. He said never bought anything on credit.
Wow.
How many people can say that?
I can't.
I can't say it either.
Yeah, I can't.
I do it all the time. Unfortunately, I don't want to.
But
I
we
really
do
am looking forward to the day when I have no debt. So anyway, so in spite of these sincere efforts at parenting, his father seemed to have a mysterious and growing anger towards him. He was increasingly volatile, and eventually, in his teen years, he fell into enraged silences. That's always the worst, dude, with your dad.
Enraged silences.
Well, you'd be pissed off, but he wouldn't say anything.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah. And he always knew that money issues plagued him. Like Steve always knew that money issues plagued his dad. And that they were always dependent on the next hypothetical real estate sale.
Oh wow.
And perhaps this was the source of his anger. But Steve thought that it was because of his show business dream slipping further into the sunset. And he chose to blame his family, who needed food, shelter, and attention.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, like here's the big thing is like today, like Steve Martin is like one of the most famous comedians that you can think of.
Oh, without a doubt.
And
Well, I think he's kind of disappeared in the last maybe like 5 years.
but
Most people, well,
you
because
and I still love him.
he hasn't done a movie in a long time.
It's been a while.
But if you really know comedy, especially comedy movies,
exactly.
you know Steve Martin.
Well, like his acting in the Pink Panther movies.
Yeah.
like we were talking
That was
about.
one of
earlier.
probably some of the last movies he did. Actually.
Yeah, and that was maybe about 10 years ago. But who cares, dude? Like he's made his money. He's
just doing what he wants now. But he's been able to do that for years.
I just like
I think he's actually right now he's going on another tour with was it Robin Short? No. Why did they want to say Robin Short?
I know what you're talking about.
Martin Short.
Martin Short.
Martin
yeah,
Short.
yeah.
Yeah, he's going another because they actually did a Netflix special called like An Evening You're Soon to Forget.
Oh,
But they're doing it.
yeah.
They're doing another tour actually, which is really cool.
Yeah, I would go see that.
Did you see that one though? The
I
Evening You're Soon to
haven't.
Forget?
I haven't.
Oh, dude, we gotta watch it.
Yeah,
It's
I
fucking
haven't.
fantastic.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
Martin Short's another one of those people that don't think about that he was actually a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
And like he did, like my favorite movie that Martin Short did was Inner Space.
Inner Space, yeah.
Yeah.
With Randy Quaid.
Yeah.
Was it
yeah.
Randy Quaid?
Yeah.
Dennis Quaid. It was Dennis Quaid.
Dennis Quaid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dennis Quaid. Yeah.
It was and he did a lot of movies,
Oh, yeah.
but in particular that
Maybe we'll
was
have to do Martin Short one day.
hell
That'd be fun, actually.
Hell yeah.
Well, one bit movie they actually ended up doing later, which probably around the time they first met, was probably Three Amigos.
Oh shit!
I've never,
I
you know what,
forgot
though?
about
I've never
Amigos.
seen Three Amigos.
What?
Yeah, I know.
You've
right?
never seen Three
Never
Amigos?
seen it.
Are we gonna have to have a fist fight right now?
Anyway, that's more his acting career. That's not what I'm going into. So I should get back to what we're talking about. So though his sister seemed to escape his their father's wrath, his mother grew more and more submissive to his father in order to avoid his temper.
Really?
Yeah. Well, you see that sometimes. You see that with some women. Not to say like it was bad that she did that. She was just trying to avoid conflict. Which, if you want to hear our debate on that, check out our episode of Philosophical Bones.
That's right.
About I think it was about conflict, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So timid and secretive, she whispered thoughts to Steve with the caveat, "Don't tell anyone I said that." I think his mom was saying
That's
this to him.
never a good thing.
And filling him with belief, which took years to correct, that it was dangerous to express one's true opinion. This is definitely like where it shows like how his father really kind of fucked him up.
Well, his father sounds like he came from a very
I didn't. You know, that's one thing in the book is I didn't
background.
really. There wasn't really any talk of his past, so I honestly don't know anything about Steve Martin's dad. I just didn't get. I didn't. Maybe I'll look at it before. Try to find something before the next part. But from everything,
You have a lighter. Sorry.
Really interrupting me with that?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So I'll get back to it. Anything.
So you were talking about Steve Martin's dad.
Yeah. So Melinda, 4 years older than Steve was at the time.
So he has an older sister. I didn't
yeah.
realize that.
Well, I told you he had a sister.
Well, keep it rolling.
So they always went to a different school, but so they never really bonded or coalesced until decades later when she phoned him and said, "I want to know my brother," initiating a lasting communication between them. And actually, I want to bring something up because I actually talked to my sister for the first time in like a year and a half. Like, I actually have a conversation with her for the first time in a year and a half a few days ago. And honestly, it was like she pretty much said the exact same thing to me, which was like, you don't like, oh, well, yeah, you want to talk about like what I was like or what I would have been like when I was younger. It was like, you don't know me. Dude. And that was kind of like, and I read this before I talked to her, and it really hit me. And I was like, you're right. I don't really know you, and I'd like to.
Well, it's you take the opportunity.
And it was kind of crazy to realize that. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't believe like, I was reading this book on Steve Martin and it's totally applying. So anyway, that's enough about my life.
Enough about my life.
So to further go on, so he was punished for his worst transgressions by spankings with switches or a paddle. And
I've been there,
dude. Me too. A holdover from any Texas childhood of that time. And when his mother warned, just wait till Glenn gets home, he would be sick with fear, dreading nightfall, dreading the moment when he would walk through the door. His growing moodiness made each episode of punishment more unpredictable and hence more frightening. And once, when he was about when Steve was about 9 years old, he went too far. That evening, his mood was ominous, and we indulged in a rare family treat. Eating out.
Okay.
You're eating out Bird's Eye frozen tea dinners in front of the television. So his father mothered something.
Bird's Eye. I used to buy Bird's Eye.
Yeah, I'd go for the Hungry Man myself. But
how do you feed a
well,
hungry
actually, I don't even
man?
know because I haven't eaten a TV dinner in years. I used to get the kid cuisine ones. Those are good. When I was younger.
Oh my god,
those are good.
Yeah. They come with pudding.
Shout out Ronnie. I want to go Ronnie. Talk about some like 90s TV dinners.
Yeah, I used to.
Anybody doesn't know what we're talking. Well, most people probably don't know what we're talking about. He does a podcast called The 90s Nostalgia.
Yes, shout out 90s Nostalgia.
Great podcast if you're in the 90s at all.
It, like speaking of the kid cuisines, they used to have the big thing for me. They had a little thing of pudding.
That's the only thing I'm thinking about. That and the brownie, or the brownie or pudding.
Right. You throw that shit in the microwave and you have a hot brownie.
Exactly.
Like, hell yeah.
So good.
Hell yeah. It's so good. Continue. I'm sorry.
So his father muttered something to Steve, and he responded with a mumble, "What?" And his dad shouted, "You heard me." thundered up. And he got up from his chair, pulled his belt out of his lube, and it inflicted a beating that seemed never to end. He curled his arms around his body, and he stood over I'm gonna put this. I'm gonna read this. I curled my arms around my body as he stood over me like a titan and delivered the blows. The next day, I was covered in welts and wore long pants and sleeves to hide them at school. This was the only incident of its kind in our family. My father was never physically abusive toward my mother or sister, and he never again physically extreme with me. Was never again physically extreme with me. Sorry. However, this beating was his worsening tendencies, towards rage directed at his mother, which I heard in fright through the thin walls of our home, made me resolve with icy determination that only the most formidable relationship would exist between my father and me. For perhaps 30 years, neither he nor I did anything to repair the rift.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the rest of his childhood, like, they hardly spoke. And there was little that was said between them that was not critical, and there was little that he said back that was not terse or mumbled.
That's rough.
And when he graduated from high school, his dad offered to buy him a tuxedo, but Steve refused, and because he learned from him to reject all aid and assistance. He detested Steve detested extravagance and pleaded with us not to give him gifts.
Well, he didn't want.
Yeah. Well, verbatim, it's he detested extravagance and pleaded with us not to give him gifts. I think it was actually his father said that.
Oh, okay.
So he didn't want any gifts or anything. He was like one of those guys, you know. And I'm kind of the same way. With like at Christmas, I'm like, don't give me a gift, or you know what? Give me a painting. I'm always like that.
Well, for me, it's like hang out with me.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I don't want like material shit. Just like come hang out.
Yeah, but since his father was like that, he felt that in his refusal, he was being a good son, and he said, "I wish now that they had let him buy me a tuxedo and that I let him be a dad." Having cut himself off from him, and by association the rest of the family, I was incurring psychological debts that would come due years later in the guise of romantic misconnections and a wrong-headed quest for solitude.
I know.
Can you finish this last one?
Go ahead.
So he said, I have heard it said that a complicated childhood can lead to a life in the arts. I tell you this story of my father, and let me to let you know I am qualified to be a comedian.
Oh, that's awesome! I love that.
That's why I wanted to get to that.
I love that line.
So I'll say that one line once more because I kind of fucked it up. I tell you the story of my father and me to let you know I'm qualified to be a comedian. It's almost like saying like you have to be fucked up in order to get into this kind of business.
What I was kind of like getting at, from what you were talking about, like that I'm on that same line. Like I had a shit childhood.
Did you?
Dude, I'm not gonna get into it.
Okay.
I'm not gonna get into it.
Oh.
But like I had a shit childhood, but we do a podcast where I laugh and chuckle and like I had Joe Rogan says like some of the most interesting people come from fucked up situations.
That's true.
And like my mother died when I was 7. I'm not going to get into that. And the thing is like I didn't have a fun upcoming, but it made me an interesting person.
Yeah. But you choose being a boring person over.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But it just like,
that's a whole philosophical question right there.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at and what you were saying is that I understand on the story of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like
so you can relate to what
absolutely
to him, you know, and this is something you never knew about him.
Absolutely. Like my childhood was fucked. I understand the story from Steve Martin. His childhood was fucked. And here's the thing is we're probably on the same note that we chose to be funny.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
No, I get it.
Yeah, like that's because if I didn't choose to be funny, I would have been probably depressed.
Yeah.
So you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So the next thing I'm going to go on to is his kind of career, I guess I should say, at Disneyland. So when they were still living in the Inglewood neighborhood, their neighborhood was scheduled to be flattened by the impending construction of the San Diego Freeway.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So what happened next was his father's decision to move profoundly affected his life. You know, Orange County, California, 45 minutes south of Inglewood, was a real estate boomtown, created from the sprawl of Los Angeles. And it consisted of interlocking rectangles, of orange groves and tract homes, and was perfectly suited for his father's profession. Do you think like this is probably, well, it was after the baby boom, but at the time, people were still like, they're moving in, they're like, oh, let's go to California, buy a home, and this is actually probably around, the 50s or early 50s at least, or early to mid, were like definitely a boom time for tract homes.
Yes.
You look at actually one thing I think of is like Edward Scissorhands.
Oh, that's a good fucking point.
Well, I think when they filmed that, it was actually in a newly built like tract home.
Well, Edward Scissorhands was filmed in the 80s.
Yeah,
but
still, like,
it's on the same point of what you're talking about. Because it's like you said, tract homes.
Oh yeah. Well, I personally hate tract homes.
Yeah.
You go to Las Vegas, dude. It's like
we don't have a lot of.
That was one thing I didn't like in Las Vegas is when I lived there, because I lived there for like 13 years. Was I hate tract homes.
We don't have a lot of that here, though.
No, in Tucson we don't.
No,
we really don't. It's mainly a lot of like old homes, and a lot of them were built in like the 50s, 60s.
You get a lot of old homes.
When you get further out, you see more.
Well, that, and then you have what I call cookie cutter homes, to where it's like the same build.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
So anyway, so his parents purchased a brand new tract home for $16,000.
That's nothing, man.
And like I said, this is like mid 50s.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Then.
So he was 10 years old at the time when his family moved from L.A. to Garden Grove.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Makes me think of Sublime.
Yeah.
So we took that trip to Garden Grove. So.
Yeah, and that whole area was still like pretty new for the most part. I'm sure that same home nowadays is probably going for about $1 million.
Yeah,
if not more. I don't know how much homes in Orange County cost now or Garden Grove, but
we couldn't afford it.
I bet that home is still around, and it's probably a fucking $2 million home.
Yeah, we couldn't afford it.
No, fuck no, no. Come on, dude. I mean,
we can hardly afford our homes in Arizona.
And it's cheap to live in Arizona. So in the summer of 1955, Disneyland opened in Anaheim, California. On a day so sweltering, the asphalt on Main Street was as soft as a yoga mat.
Ooh, that's rough. Because we get that here.
Well, we did an episode on Nerdy Bones actually about theme parks, and
yeah.
I talked about Disneyland, and that the opening day was really fucked, man.
Dude, well, the big thing about it being so hot that the asphalt is soft, that's a thing that people don't realize. Like, that's a thing.
I don't know if it was like said or anything.
Well, it's like
well, when Disneyland.
Like here in Tucson,
I can't remember.
Well,
I did a whole episode on it. And I can't remember.
Like here in Tucson, like there's we have motorcycle parking. And the asphalt is so hot that the motorcycle can put down their peg stand and it pushes into the asphalt.
Really?
You've never seen that?
No, I haven't.
You've never seen that?
Yeah.
Like, literally, like next time you go anywhere, look at the motorcycle parking and there's like divots.
I'll look at that.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, so a few months later, a school friend told him that kids his age were being hired to sell Disneyland guidebooks on weekends.
Oh,
in the summer.
I've heard this.
Said, I couldn't wait. I pedaled my bike the 2 miles to Disneyland, parked it in the bike rack, and looked up to see a locomotive from yesteryear. Its whistle blowing loudly and smokestack filled with air with white steam.
I love the way he writes.
Chugging into the turn of the century depot just above a giant image of Mickey Mouse rendered in vibrant colored flowers. He went to the exit, told a hand stamper that he was applying for a job, and was directed towards a souvenir stand a few steps inside the main gate. He spoke with a cigar-chomping vendor named Joe and told him his resume. No experience at anything. This must have impressed Joe because he was issued a candy-striped shirt, a garter for his sleeve, a vest with a watch pocket, a straw boater hat, and a stack of guidebooks to be sold for 25 cents each, from which Steve was to receive the enormous sum of 2 cents per book. The $2 in cash he earned that day made him feel like a millionaire.
Oh, dude! Like, think how old was he?
He was 10 years old. This is before, like, you couldn't. Well, you obviously couldn't have a kid 10 years old working nowadays. Because I think you said
it'd be a bad thing.
Didn't he say lax child labor laws at one point? I read that. So anyway, guidebooks were only sold in the morning when thousands of people poured through the gates. And by noon, he was done. But he didn't have to leave. He had free admission to the park.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. You think like he was able to go and ride all the rides though, but actually at the time in Disneyland, you actually had to have tickets to certain parts of the park.
Okay.
There were free attractions where you could get in and just go to those and do them. But if you wanted to do like certain things, you had to have like a a B ticket or a C ticket or whatever.
Okay.
To go and do certain attractions. And where am I going there? So Disneyland and the idea of it seemed so glorious that he believed.
Could you imagine a child Steve Martin
10 years old
at Disneyland?
Dude. Imagine yourself at Disneyland 10 years old.
I've never been. Been.
It's pretty fun, man.
Yeah.
Well, as long as you're not dealing with that. Well, which we pretty much always are of like, fucking tons and tons of people around you. So anyway, Disneyland and the idea of it seemed so glorious that he believed it should be some far away impossible to visit Shangri-La. Not 2 miles from the house where he was about to grow up. And with its pale blue castle flying pennants emblazoned with a made-up Disney family crest, its precise gardens and horse-drawn carriages maintained to jewel box perfection. Just to paint a picture of what Disneyland was like to him.
Well, and that's what he was feeling when he was there.
Yeah.
And that's
the way he described it as Disneyland was his Versailles.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And he became a regular employee at age 10. Yeah, go on to the next part. What I got marked next?
Next.
So, though his mother provided 50 cents for lunch, the big difference in his life was that he was self-reliant and funded. Like I talked about with the whole part about like him never taking credit from anyone.
Mm-hmm.
She would give him money for lunch, but he was like, no. Like I think he'd take it, but yeah, well, because he would give it to him, and it was like to buy like, what the way he put it was a grilled cheese sandwich for 35 cents and a large cherry phosphate with a genuine red dye number 2 cherry for 15 cents. But he kind of didn't want it. He said he was proud. He was He want to put. I want to say this. He was so proud to be employed that some years later, still at Disneyland, he harbored a secret sense of superiority over his teenage peers who had suntans because he knew it meant they weren't working.
Oh my god!
Because he worked there for a long time, actually.
Well, he had a job.
He started when he was 10.
Yeah, he had a job. Like when was your first job?
I think it was 15.
I started at Subway.
Washing dishes, which I'm actually doing right now.
I started at Subway when I was 14.
Full circle, man.
14 years old.
Yeah.
Right?
Can you still get a job at 14?
No.
I don't think so.
It's illegal. Actually.
Is it?
Yeah.
You got to be 16 now?
It's the Child Work Act or something like that.
But are you 16 now? Or?
Well, I think it's 16.
Yeah.
But I started at Subway Subway when I was 14. Worked at Subway till I was 28.
Yeah.
And then moved into the job I have now.
Do you kind of wish you would have stayed at Subway?
No.
No? You don't think you'd be a store manager by now and be doing better?
I wouldn't be making the money that I am now.
Yeah.
And
are you sure?
No, I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm sure.
Okay, I just wanted to ask.
It's Subway is a thing that it's kind of being a big part of it in the early 90s and understanding what it is. It's a cancer.
Yeah.
It's not.
No, I get it. I worked for Cola for 8 years. It's a cancer.
It's not a good thing.
Most miserable time of my life, honestly. So anyway.
Anyway,
we always got to throw a little bit of ourselves in. Which some people are like, I'm coming here for the knowledge. I'm like, yeah, but we're still going to talk about ourselves. But that's what makes it interesting.
Right.
That's why it's Nerdy Post.
That's right.
So a few years later, after he stopped selling guidebooks, he said perhaps at 13, and because he was too old. Old at 13
to sell guidebooks.
Yeah, but he became a rope trick demonstrator.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, fitting in as much work as he could around his C average high school studies.
Like what pops into my head is like people doing like hopscotch, like
Well, yeah, and it's like he was 13, but he was still going to school and working at the same time.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And so so two places captivated him most, and one was Merlin's Magic Shop, and the other was Pepsi Cola's Garden Horseshoe Review in Frontierland.
We talked about this, like
Did we?
well, you and I before recording, talking about like his love for magic.
Yeah.
So continue.
So yeah, it was the review in Frontierland where a guy named Wally Bogue, Boag. So I might be saying it wrong, but Bogue, I want to go with. The first comedian he ever saw in person, piled a hilarious trade of gags and offbeat skills such as gun twirling and balloon animals. Yeah, which is, and that's actually something Steve Martin used his act years later was doing balloon animals. Yeah. So the admission price there was always free to everyone, made him a regular. Because he, like I said, he would get off early and he could just go and roam the park. And here he had his first lessons in performing. And though he was never on stage, he absorbed Wally Bogue's timing, saying his next line in his head.
Oh, my God.
And took the audience response as though it were his, because he'd repeat it. Like he'd just say his lines and while everything was going on. And he studied where the big laughs were, learned how Wally got the small ones, and saw tiny nuances that kept the thing alive between lines.
Well, he was studying the art of comedy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When he was 13. I'm guessing he was 13 at this moment when he was talking about it. And his fantasy was that one day Wally would be sick with the flu, and a desperate stage manager would come out and ask the audience if there was an adolescent boy who could possibly fill in. Right?
Oh, yeah.
That's everybody.
Is there a doctor in the house?
It's like the whole thing of like, you look at like rock stars. It's like, every like person who's like a huge fan of such and such band really hopes one day like, oh, this guy got hurt on stage. Like, is there anybody who knows how to play?
Yeah. Well, it's like, is there a doctor in the house?
Yeah, is there a doctor in the house type thing? Well, if there was an actual doctor.
Well, I use that phrase as a caveat. It's like if you are going to see your favorite thing, and like it's like for me, like it's I go to my favorite like hardcore metal concert.
Yeah.
The singer gets sick and it's like, is there anybody that could come up here and do this? So like, I'd be like, me.
Yeah. Right.
So is there a doctor in the house? It's a Bugs Bunny type joke.
Yeah.
It's like when you say, is there a doctor in the house? Is like, is there anybody that can come do this?
Fill in. Yeah.
Yeah. But continue.
So Merlin's Magic Shop was the next best thing to cheering audiences at the Golden Horseshoe. And tricks were demonstrated in front of crowds of 2 or 3 people. And 20-year-old Jim Barlow took the concept of a joke shop far beyond what Disney brass would have officially allowed. Except it was clear that the customers enjoyed his kidding. And this guy was a huge influence on him. So Jim's greeting to browsers was, "Can I take your money? I mean, help you." All right, I could probably say that with better delivery. Can I take your money? Oh, I'm sorry. Can I help you? And after a sale, he would say loudly, "This trick is guaranteed to break before you get home."
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's comedy, dude.
Yeah. I think I actually bought something. Might have bought something once at like the Magic Shop in Disneyland.
I've never been.
I've never
been.
So he loitered in the shop so often that Jim and Steve became buddies, and Steve memorized his routines, and he wanted more than ever to be a magician.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Well, you see, like, when he was younger, he got the magic set and he memorized it. But then, he started finally getting into magic at Disneyland. And someone was like kind of a professional, even though they were only like doing it for like 2 or 3 people at a time.
Well, you look at a lot of his sets. There was a lot of like magic involved.
Oh yeah.
Like his like early sets was like just little magic tricks.
Well, I'll get into that a little later. Actually,
okay.
I'll talk about it. So at home, he perused magic catalogs for hours. Like he dreamed of owning, just these crazy tricks that he could just never afford. And he had fantasies of levitation and awesome power.
Me too.
With no Harry Potter to be compared to, his store-bought tricks could go a long way towards making him feel special. With any spare money he had, he bought tricks, memorized their accompanying standard platter, and assembled a magic show that he would perform for anyone who would watch. Mostly his parents and their tolerant bridge partners.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like they're having card games, and their son was like, "I'm gonna come out and do a trick."
Yeah, well, it's like, hey, like let my kid do this. Like, hey, just laugh and clap.
Just indulge.
But when you're a kid, you're like, oh shit, they like it. You're kind of naive.
Well, like real quick before you keep going.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite shows lately is Master Chef.
Yeah.
And the one thing I started watching today was MasterChef Junior.
Okay.
To where it's just kids cooking,
All right.
and they're not mean like
I think I've seen that with the Gordon Ramsay, when he's with kids and he's like kind of nice.
Yeah,
which is weird.
Well, like even if what they cook sucks,
Yeah.
he's like, okay, this is what you did. This is what you did right.
Yeah.
And this is what I would have done.
Well, I heard.
You
Well, I
know,
remember.
he encourages no matter how bad it is.
We've talked about Kevin Hart before in Philosophical Bones, but he talked about how when it comes to children, if you yell at them, they're not ever going to listen to what you have to say.
Yeah, you got to be encouraging.
You got to really actually talk to them.
Yeah, you got to be
with
encouraging.
a calm voice. And I mean, we're saying this. Neither one of us are parents.
No.
But
no, we're actually
But I've always
not.
been of that opinion too. Like, you know what? There's no point in yelling at a kid.
Yeah.
It's just showing it like, hey, you're pissed off. Like, hey, I need to stop. Like,
yeah. Well, I didn't mean to like derail, but like what I was getting at was you're talking about Steve like showing his magic to adults and adults not like that sucks.
Well, they never did that.
Yeah.
Not that you said anyway. So to get back to it. So anyway, one afternoon he was in the audience at the Golden Horseshoe when he blacked out and collapsed.
What?
Yeah, he said, I remember my head striking the table. A few seconds later, I was sitting back up, but unnerved. Nobody noticed.
How old was he when that happened?
I don't know.
Okay.
He was probably like 13.
Okay.
Around there. That's at least where the timetable he's giving. So nobody noticed, but so he remembered this incident. He reported this incident to his mother, and she called a doctor who lived next door. And honestly, what was it? He asked. It was a thump in his chest, and he said tests confirmed that that he had a heart murmur.
Really? I didn't know that.
More spookily expressed, as he puts it, as a prolapsed mitral valve. A mostly benign malady is the way he put it.
Spell it.
Malady. Malady.
Oh, okay.
That was predicted to go away as he aged. It did, but it planted in him a seed of hypochondria that poisonously bloomed years later. Yeah.
I didn't know he was a hypochondriac.
I never knew that either, actually. That's one cool thing about this book.
I had no idea.
Well, I'm reading it to you, so you don't have to. So after so at this time he was doing the rope trick thing. So after Poor Sales ended his rope tricking days, he spent a year working away from the action, as he puts it, in the sheet metal gray storage room of Tiki's Tropical Imports in Adventureland, where he pinned finger-piercing price tags onto straw hats.
Say it again.
Where he pinned finger-piercing price tags onto straw hats.
Okay.
So he was working in the back room, like putting price tags on hats. You know, he was working in the back room. He wasn't dealing with people for a year. So he had heard it. So eventually he had heard rumors of a job opening at the magic shop, and longing to be free of the sunless warehouse, he went over and successfully applied, and making that day the happiest of his life so far. And,
that's awesome.
So I'm guessing he's 14 by now. So he began his show business career for a few days later at age 15. I totally got that wrong. Age 15 in August of 1960. And let's see where I got this. So he stood behind a counter 8 hours a day, shuffling some Svengali decks.
Svengali. I know that. I know what that is. Yeah.
Manipulating wizard decks. And mental photography cards.
Svengali was like. Here's a quick little note. Svengali is the guy that created the rabbit in the hat trick.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I just know that.
So, and he was also performing the cup and balls trick on a rectangular
cup and what?
The cup and balls trick.
I just wanted to say
on a rectangle of padded.
I was trying to make you say balls again, but go ahead.
So a few customers would gather, usually a young couple on a date or a mom and dad with kids, and he would try his first jokes, all lifted from Jim's funny patter, as he put it.
Say it again.
Jim's funny patter.
Okay.
And he had his first audience that wasn't friends or family. And on his weekends and holidays, they were now spent in long hours at Disneyland, made possible by lax child labor laws from his high school. That's actually where I found the lax child labor laws thing, and which assigned no homework. And at closing time, he would stock the shelves, sweep the floor, count the register, and then bicycle home in the dark.
Oh man!
So yeah, that was one cool thing. Like when he was in high school, he described himself as a C student. but at the same time, it was like they didn't assign any homework, so it was really easy for him to go through school. And and honestly, he just didn't give a shit.
Well, this was the 70s.
He was more interested in entertaining too.
Yeah.
Well, it was the 50s.
50s, and I really had.
Did I say 19?
Well, I had really.
It was 1960 by now.
I had really no idea that he had a love for magic. I didn't know that.
I knew he did magic.
Well, I know that he did, but I didn't realize it was such a big part of him growing up.
Oh, yeah. So let's see. I got to find out where I'm going next. I got a few pages to flip through. So because he was demonstrating tricks to 8 to 12 hours a day, he got better and better. And he was able to afford more professional equipment. And he put together a magic act complete with music. They would get a friend to play on the record for him, and he knew when to drop it and all, drop the needle and all that, because they were still using the records and all that. So Jim Barlow, who's his manager at the magic shop, connected him to a network of
Have you ever been to a magic shop?
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. Dude.
It is pretty cool.
Sorry, continue. I'm sorry.
I probably bought stuff from there. Oh, what the hell was I doing? So connected him to a network of Cub Scout troops seeking entertainment. And the minuscule prestige from his magic shop gig enabled him to work for free or sometimes for $5 at local Kiwanis, I want to say, is what it's called, Kiwanis Club. Okay. Kiwanis.
Oh, okay.
So, but he was now performing at the hectic pace of one show every 2 or 3 months. Yeah. So, Wally Bogue, like I said from the review, the rope trick and all that, and the comedy and all that, would lend him his copies of Robert Orban's joke books filled with musty one-liners from other comedians' acts. But to Steve, they were as new as Sunrise. These books were like the Bible, and he scoured them for usable passages.
Musty one-liners.
Yeah,
I like
musty
that.
one-liners. Yeah. So, but he did have a life outside of Disneyland and had been attending Rancho Alamitos High School. But in the fall of 1962, redistricting moved him across town to Garden Grove High School.
Redistricting?
Yeah.
Okay. I was saying, okay.
Why do you have such a hard time saying that, man? Redistricting. Redistricting. Where he was happy to discard his old personality and adopt a new one defined by the word of the day, nonconformist. So on his first day of school, when he saw the face of God, the Don Walsh Auditorium, seated 1,500 people, and its interior narrowed like a funnel to focus all eyes on its polished hardwood stage. And I want to say he actually put a full paragraph description in how much he loved this place. He goes into the wood and the curtains and all that.
That's cool.
But from what he said from there was he said, I knew I wanted to be up there rather than down here.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. So when Claude Plum asked him to appear in a vaudeville show featuring Wally Bogue, coincidentally staged at this auditorium, his heart leaped. He said, I was to perform a 5-minute act billed as Steve Martin, young and magic.
Oh man!
And in an evening show for Wally's fans, the program appeared from the printer with the perfect precedent typo. Steve Martin, mouth and magic.
Mouth. I've actually heard of that.
Yeah. He said, I couldn't judge how it went since it was my first show in front of a sizable audience, but I don't remember a standing ovation. The daily excitement of his life at Disneyland and high school was in stark contrast to his life at home, though. Silent family dinners, the general taboo of free talk and opinion, his father's unpredictable temper, and the stubborn grudges he collected and held toward him meant that the family never gelled.
Oh.
But when Steve was away from home, him and his high school friends enjoyed endless conversation and laughter, and his enthusiasm for what he was doing, working at Disneyland, clowning with friends, and being swept up in the early rock and roll of AM radio, made life seem joyful and limitless. So, yeah, but he really loved his job at Disneyland.
Yeah, well, I'm getting a lot of that.
Yeah, he loved working there, but it's like his family life sucked. When he was home, he fucking hated it, but when he was out, he loved it. Maybe that was why he was working 8-10 hours a day at Disneyland.
If I had a job at Disneyland,
doing what he was doing,
and I would be there for 8-10 hours.
Well, depending on what you're doing, because a lot. You see, there's actually employees at Disneyland who can't really survive off of what they're making.
Well,
it's really crazy. There's always a seedy side to shit.
Yeah,
I'm sorry I had to bring it down like that. Disneyland is such a magical place. It's awesome.
Magical. It's
until you find out what the employees are paying. And you're like, this is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Why the fuck are they not paying their employees right?
Like a Disneyland employee, in my mind, should not have to struggle. Like,
no,
I
think Disneyland finally started to do something about it. In Disneyland, Disney World, but it can be kind of fucked.
Well, like my big thing is I forget what it's called. It's this new Star Wars thing.
What the Rise of Skywalker?
No, it's like a full area.
Oh, Galaxy's Edge.
Galaxy's Edge, dude. Like, I want to go to that so bad.
Me too. So be packed as fuck when it opens, though.
Yeah, I want to go to that so bad.
Anyway, you're getting off track, man.
Yeah. But anyway, go ahead.
I'm sorry for hearing a bunch of squeaking on this episode. I got a new chair.
Cheers.
And
I'm like trying to make a squeak and it won't happen.
Wow.
Go ahead.
So when he moved out of the house at 18, he rarely called home to check up on his parents or tell them how he was doing. And why? The answer, this is the way he puts it, actually. Why? The answer shocks me as I write it. I didn't know I was supposed to.
Oh, wow.
Well, even when actually I moved out of my house, it took me a while to move out. I think I was like maybe 22 when I moved out. My place.
I was 18.
Or my parents' place.
I was 18, but like my dad was like almost angry.
Yeah.
When I left.
Well, when I moved out, it was I was happy to move out, honestly. But I call my dad once a month. I wouldn't ever call my mom.
Yeah.
Because I can't fucking stand my mother. So let's see, 18 at the time. So things were changing at the magic shop, though. So his manager at the time left to consult on a television show, and our store needed a new manager. So they hired a guy named Dave Stewart, and he was a former vaudevillian who had worked the circus with a magic act. And, sorry, I gotta find my next place. So Dave Stewart's stories really intrigued him.
How dare you need to take a second?
I know. I gotta turn the page. And
How dare you?
So his stories intrigued him, and he developed an interest in the history. And Steve developed an interest in the history of vaudeville, and he read up on the subject, studying Joe Laurie's book Vaudeville, and was captivated by its descriptions of each old time act. And it mentioned the Cherry Sisters, and it was here that Steve first heard an act described as so bad it was good. And the Five Screeching Sisters elicited booze and vegetables from the audience, and yet still made it to Broadway. A concept that the off-pitch singer Miss Miller succeeded with in the 60s, and that Andy Kaufman took to the limit in the 80s.
Thank you very much.
That's why I wanted to mention that part. So the Main Street shop sold magic books, rarely purchased, but he found a book on a shelf that was pretty much gathering dust, and it was a yellow cover that caught his eye. This book turned out to be more important to him than The Catcher in the Rye. It was Daryl Fitzke's Showman. The name of the book was called Showmanship for Magicians, and it was first published in 1943.
Wow!
And he came to find out later that coincidentally, he actually ended up being a distant relative by marriage.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so the internet bio actually reads for this guy. So born in Anawa, Illinois, pen name of Daryl Fitzroy. Acoustical engineer in San Rafael, California, semi-pro magician, toured an unsuccessful full evening show in 1939 to 40, reportedly dropped magic in disgust. In disgust. Yeah. That was the internet bio that was given.
It's like, I fucking hate this shit.
Yeah. So, but Showmanship in Magic is a handbook meant to turn amateurs into professionals. Its subtitle is Complete Discussions of Audience Appeals and Fundamentals of Showmanship and Presentation. So Fitzke started the book out by denigrating the current state of magic, saying it was old-fashioned. Though published in 1943, this statement contains an enduring truth. All entertainment is or is about to become old-fashioned.
Oh, wow.
There is room, he implies, for something new. And I really loved that, actually.
Yeah,
So the guy was saying in
that.
1943 that magic was old and tired. I mean, when was Houdini?
34.
34. So, 9 years after Houdini, he was saying like old magic was old and tired. And honestly, he was probably pretty much right.
We're still talking about Houdini, though.
We are, but at the time, but even like, that was really the golden age of magic, though, at the time.
Yes, it was.
Like such and such the great. And,
oh yeah,
we are still amazed by magicians, but it's not anywhere close to what it was.
Well, the thing about magicians now is that they push the envelope of stuff that, like, because there's been so many things that have been like, okay, that's how they did this trick.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like you got like the guy, I'm drawing a blank, the guy that did Death by Magic.
Mm-hmm.
He's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
He's fucking amazing. Chris Angel, I'm sorry, you can hate on me if you want, but Chris Angel,
he's a good showman.
I'll
give you that.
He's
a good showman.
He's good. And there's just there's a lot of magicians out there that are still good.
Oh yeah.
But anyway,
I'm not dissing magic by any means.
No. That's just like where.
But what this guy was trying to say was, you need to come up with something new.
Right.
You need to push what you're doing.
Push the envelope.
So anyway, Fitzke then goes on to break down a show into elements such as music, rhythm, comedy, sex appeal, personality, and selling yourself. And he concludes that attention to each is vital and necessary. Why not throw everything in the book at the audience like an opera does? Costumes, lights, music, everything. He also talks about something that was to land on Steve with a thud 6 years later, the importance of originality. So what? In quotes. So what? I thought at the time, quote unquote, who cares? He didn't know it. He didn't think anything of it at the time.
Well, it was the sign of the times.
So like, you don't need to be original. Like,
we're just a couple.
No one cares.
We're just a couple of wild and crazy guys.
We want we want to watch Big Bang Theory, and be entertained and all. Or we want to watch the 19th season of NCIS.
It's just like whatever's out. We'll just.
I don't know.
it.
Is NCIS even still on? I don't fucking know.
I don't know.
Law and Order season fucking 35.
Law and Order Special Victims, whatever
of comedy.
Exactly.
I might actually watch that.
Oh my god. Special
there was a drive-by clowning.
It was a drive-by clowning, dude. Oh my god, dude.
My child is scarred.
That's funny. I'm sorry, that's funny, dude.
That might actually be something Steve Martin would have made. Sorry, sir. There was a drive-by clowning.
It was a drive-by clowning. It was a run-by fruiting. That's Robin Williams.
Yeah. It actually sounds very similar to what Robin Williams or even Steve Martin would have said. By the way, just to mention again, we are doing Robin Williams next month.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
So
just before you keep going, the book I'm shit. The book I'm starting with is called Robin. So
I thought you were gonna mention why we poop or something. Or... What's the name of that book?
We all poop.
We all poop.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm glad we're. I'm sorry. No one else is laughing about this. But,
we are.
Well, this is awesome.
So we all poop.
Yeah, we haven't laughed as much since the start. So we get more back to Steve Martin again.
He poops too.
He does poop too. So following the advice of showmanship and magic, he like Steve kept records of how each gag played after his local shows for Cub Scouts or the club or the Kiwanis Club. So excellent or big laugh or quiet, and he'd write in the margins of his book. Then he would summarize how he could make the show better next time. The nice response to a few gags had planted a nagging thought that contradicted his magical goals. They love it when the trick doesn't work, or when the tricks don't work. And he started to think that the future of a serious magician was limited. Plus, he was priced out of the market by the impossible cost of advanced stage illusions. Sawing a lady in half, $200. By doing comedy, though, however, he could be more like Stan Laurel and Jack Benny. More like Wally Bogue. So that's kind of cool. Like, he kind of realized, like, he kind of couldn't do what he wanted. I mean, he loved magic, but it was just it was kind
Well,
of.
he's starting to realize like what sells.
Well, also the fact that like when he talks about like people actually enjoyed the fact that when I fucked a trick up more than when I got it right. So that's definitely a very like
Jack Benny.
What do they call it, like an aha moment or something.
Yeah.
So at the time, the Magic Shop gave him a taste of performing and convinced him that he never wanted to wait on customers again. So and he didn't have the patience. I'm actually gonna read verbatim with this. I didn't have the patience. My smile was becoming plastered on. I then crossed all kinds of jobs off my list of potentials, such as waiting tables or working in stores or driving trucks. How could my delicate fingertips, now dedicated to the swift execution of the two-handed pass, clutch the heavy, callus-inducing steering wheel of a 10-ton semi?
Wow.
Yeah. And but there was a problem at age 18. He had absolutely no gifts. He could not sing or dance, and the only acting.
He played the fuck out of the banjo, though.
I'm getting that actually.
Okay, go ahead.
So the only thing he did was really just shouting. Thankfully, his perseverance is a great substitute for talent. I should say
substitute for talent.
Yeah, I should say perseverance is a great substitute for talent. That's a great line, actually.
It is, actually.
And having been motivated by Earl Scruggs' rendition of Foggy Mountain Breakdown, he had learned barely to play the banjo.
He was good at the banjo.
It's funny how you mentioned the banjo.
Well, he has a band.
Well, no, he's great now.
Yeah, he has a
band.
But
at the time, yeah, he wasn't really a banjo player.
Okay.
So he taught himself by slowing down banjo records and on his turntable and picking out the songs note by note.
Wow.
And the only place to practice was without antagonizing everyone in the house was in his car, parked on the street with the windows rolled up, even in the middle of August. And he said he could also juggle passably.
Juggle passably.
Passably. So despite a lack of natural abilities, he did have one element necessary to all early creativity: naivety.
Naivete.
That fabulous quality that keeps you from knowing just how unsuited you are for what you were about to do. I actually really loved that.
It is. That's a good line, dude.
Sorry, I'm gonna. And after graduation, he half-heartedly applied to and was accepted to Santa Ana Junior College, where he took drama classes and pursued an unexpected interest in English poetry. And he had heard about a theater at Disneyland's friendly starting driving rival, Knott's Berry Farm, which also we covered in the theme parks episode in Nerdy Bones.
Back to Disneyland.
Yeah.
I was like trying to say it for a second. Disney.
But Knott's Berry Farm, they needed entertainers with short acts. And one afternoon, he successfully auditioned with a thin magic act at a small theater on the grounds, making this the second happiest day of his life so far.
That's awesome, dude.
And
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's what I have for that. At the moment,
nice.
That's kind of like the end of the little bit of a chapter right there. You know, going from Disneyland and when he was a kid.
A good chapter of Steve Martin's life,
yeah.
and that kind of speaks to how much we love comedians.
Yeah, I love just telling this story because I'm like, we love telling. I'm
stories.
Very much interested in just how he became who he became.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you even look at him now, and he's just a master of comedy.
Yeah, like one of my favorites is The Man with Two Brains.
Oh yeah. Well, see, but that's his movie career.
Yeah.
I'm talking about his stand-up.
Yeah.
career.
Well, here's the thing: is like I know him. You know him.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody knows Steve Martin. You say the name Steve Martin. Anybody knows that name.
You keep saying anybody or anyone.
Well, anybody knows the name of Steve Martin, like in any capacity.
What do you mean,
like you could,
anyone who's a fan of comedy?
Well, yeah, you could go to your neighbor and say the name Steve Martin, and they'd be like, "Oh, yeah,
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles." Actually,
yeah, there you go.
That's a great one. I was thinking today about him in that movie, and it was like, I need a fucking car, fucking this and fucking that. He just said "fuck" like 20 times in that segment, and they were like, "Oh my god."
My big one is
I can't believe Steve Martin said "fuck" so many times because you look at him and he's like a dad.
Yeah.
And he's had gray hair.
He's
had gray hair since like the fucking 70s, man.
Yeah, he's always been a gray-haired guy.
Oh yeah, dude.
And I just remember my big one for me is that we're just a couple wild and crazy guys.
Yeah.
And that just makes me laugh. They're like characters from like Norway or something like that.
Yeah.
And and like they walk in and they're doing this. You guys can see me
up and down.
Yeah, we're just a couple of wild and crazy guys.
So now I'm gonna get into his days at the Birdcage Theater.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, this fucking chair is annoying the shit out of me. By the way,
you said theater again.
How would you say it?
Theater.
Theater? I say theater. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, I put the
You know, you emphasize.
Because it's TRE, not TER.
It's theater.
Yeah.
Theater. And you said
Theater.
Theater. Go ahead.
Sorry, that's just the way I fucking say it. Megan gives me a lot of shit about this too.
Go ahead.
God damn you. God damn you, man.
God damn me.
So during the 60s, the 5 hand painted place card in front of the Birdcage Theater at Knott's Berry Farm.
You said theater. You did it.
Yeah. Sorry, that's just the way I'm gonna fucking say it. That's the
no,
way
you said it right.
Shut up. So, well, it said actually, the Birdcage Theater at Knott's Berry Farm read the world's greatest entertainment, but it was missing. It was actually missing an N, so it was like entertainment, not entertainment. It was entertainment.
Entertainment.
I just wanted to throw that in there.
Entertainment.
It was overlooked by the staff, audience, and visitor for an entire decade. So he worked there between the ages of 18 and 22 as an actor in melodramas. And, I gotta flip my pages. So his first performance for a paying audience were actually at the Birdcage, a wooden theater with a canvas roof inside 200 folding chairs sat on risers, and a thrust masonite stage sat behind a patch of fake grass. The actors swept the stage, raised and lowered the curtains, cleaned the house of trash, and went to on the grounds, pitching the show to visitors strolling through the park. And he was being paid $2 a show, 25 shows a week. Even in 1963, the rate was considered low. Oh, sorry. We'll go ahead and burp there. So the show consisted of a 25-minute melodrama in which the audience was encouraged to cheer the hero and boo the villain. And the play was followed by 10-minute Olio, O-L-I-O, segments involving 2 5-minute routines where the actors did their specialities, usually songs or short comedy acts. And the Birdcage was the first place where he was able to work steadily on his magic acts 6 minutes at a time, four times a day, 5 on a Sunday, for 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So the Birdcage was actually, I got a good joke. So one thing I'm gonna go to next is since we're in Tucson. So there was a joke that that one of the actors would tell. And it said, "You're from Tucson? I spent a week there one night."
Oh my God! say it again.
You're from Tucson? I spent a week there one night.
Oh, fuck.
Sorry, and not the greatest joke, but
it hits on it hits home.
Yeah, that's just what I wanted to tell because he
It's
included
in the book?
it.
That's in the book?
Yeah, he included it in the book.
Oh my God!
It was with George Scott. We told a joke.
I spent a week there one night. I'm sorry, that's just funny.
You're from Tucson. I spent a week there one night. Yeah. So 4 paying customers in the house. 4 people. If 4 people were in the house, 4 people paying. That's in a place that seated 200. It was officially an audience. So they would do shows to to resonating silence. Sorry, it took me a little bit to get out.
Resonating silence.
Yeah, if they had 4 people in the audience, they actually had to do a show. That's just the way.
Oh, they paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would you do? Like, if they paid for it, would you like?
You can't wait for 100 people to show up, otherwise you're gonna be waiting for like the whole fucking day. So let's see where I got next. So Kathy Westmoreland, who actually so this is a woman he worked with, but later in life she achieved a strange kind of celebrity as a backup singer for Elvis, and
what?
And she actually later became his confidant and then quietly his lover, Elvis' lover.
So Steve Martin has a 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon to Elvis.
Yeah, pretty much. So, but him and Kathy developed a hillbilly routine, and she on washboard and Steve on banjo, and it was his first foray into comedy without magic to back her up. And she blacked out a tooth, and the act included crossed eyes and corny jokes, and it absolutely killed. And they soon ascended to the premiere slot for the Birdcage's Oleo acts. The Saturday night 9 o'clock performance, the audience would howl and weep and thrash about, and the laugh would double the length of our 5-minute show. So it was at this point they decided to take their act to the Golden Bear for a Monday tryout. And the Bear was a folk music club in Huntington Beach, California, where all the big names played. And let's see, one of the guys I had in there is Jackson Browne would play there. But he was smug about presenting his fully broken and seemingly invulnerable act. But it was not until days later when he acknowledged to himself that his debut in the tougher world of real show business had been met with only a polite response. So he's like, Kathy and I were probably too corny for an exploding folk scene that was producing many serious and spectacular artists.
Polite response.
Yeah, the willing and forgiving audiences, the Birdcage, did not necessarily reflect those at hip folk clubs.
I love that polite response. Like they're like,
yeah. So let's see. So we'll get back a little bit in his college. So Santa Ana Jewelry College offered no philosophy classes, so he immediately applied to Long Beach State College, later renamed the loftier sounding California State University at Long Beach, and enrolled with a major in philosophy.
Really?
And he paid for his schooling out of his Birdcage wages, aided in his second year by a Dean's List scholarship, $180 a year. Achieved through his impassioned studying. And he rented and this was back in time when you could actually fucking pay for school off of a job.
Right.
If you want to listen to that, again, we've got another episode of Philosophical Bones. Where is it still worth it to go to a 4-year college?
Yeah.
I like how I can refer to our stuff and be like, hey, you want to hear more about that?
Check that.
Listen to this.
Check this out.
Sorry, I had to get a little sip of beer in there.
Sip of beer.
Yeah. So he rented a small apartment near the school, so small that its street number was 1059 and a quarter. Sorry, 1/4. If you know.
Wise men say forgiveness.
I've
is
never heard
divine.
of an ad. I've heard of halves, but I've never heard of a quarter.
Well, what it makes me think of is wise men say forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza.
Okay.
Because it's he's delivering. It's 43 and a third, 43 and a third, 43 and a third, and like Michelangelo is like in the sewer grade. He's like, hey, dude. Go ahead.
So over 3 years that he worked there, he strung together everything he knew, including Dave Stewart's glove into Dove trick, some comedy juggling, a few standard magic routines, a banjo song, and some very odd jokes. His act was eclectic, and it took 10 more years for him to make sense of it. And however, the opportunity to perform 4 and 5 times a day gave him the confidence and poise he needed. Even though his material had few distinguishing features, the repetition made him lose his amateur rattle. So that was kind of cool. He overcame the shyness and everything that he had when he
well, that's
his
hard.
dad.
That's hard, to like overcome like the public speaking is like the biggest actual fear in humans.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know me and you are the same, or like fear of that, and I think most people do too.
Well, like I actually,
well, it's like even when you called on in a class, you're kind of like, I don't want to talk. Well, I want to be up at the front.
I actually have a little.
That's why I give a fucking big props to teachers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually have a little bit of insight to public speaking. It's actually ingrained into your DNA, because a lot of the times, like when you had to talk in ancient times, when you had to actually talk in front of the group, it's to not get killed.
Yeah,
they're like, you fucked up. We're gonna give you a chance to talk and tell us why we shouldn't kill you. That's where that comes from. So that's what makes stand-up comedy such an interesting thing.
Yeah, totally.
Because I myself know actually 4 successful stand-up comedians, like Aaron Marsh, Jared DeSeco. But like the thing is like you have to get it in your brain that like this is what I do.
Yeah.
Like we ourselves do a podcast, but there's nobody like sitting here and like rubbing their chin and looking at us and judging us.
Yeah.
Like we just do it.
Yeah.
But it's a very human thing to have an issue with talking in front of people. But anyway, I'm sorry.
So there were no clubs dedicated to comedy at this time. This is like I said, early '60s, and they just didn't exist for at least 15 years. So every comedian was an outsider. So so I'm going from that, but I'm gonna go like he said. And I wanted to mention this because we did an episode on Sam Kinison. So,
Oh yeah.
So and this is just the way Steve Martin goes through it. So the best opening line that Steve Martin says he ever heard was
I know where you're going with that.
it was from Sam Kinison in the late 80s playing the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. He said, "You're going to see a lot of comedians tonight. Some will be good, some will be okay, but there's a difference between me and them. Them you might want to see again sometime."
I'm sorry, I'm like I knew that line. That's
well, there's another one he talked about, like where he talked about like another one he loved was Richard Pryor's, where he showed up like 2 hours late and he simply said, "Hope I'm funny."
I know. Just real quick without derailing stuff. There's one of my favorite Richard Pryor lines. He says, "Me and my buddies used to hang out, and we couldn't do anything until 11:30, and you had to be home at 11:30. We'd go outside, and there'd be dudes. I mean, I'm using the words dudes, hanging out next to lampposts. And what are you doing? Waiting for 11:30." Anyway, go ahead.
Good old Richard Pryor.
Yeah,
Probably the greatest.
11:30.
Just like top 3 best ever.
Yeah.
So using the birdcage as the home base, he flirted with outside work, auditioning for gigs while keeping his class load at school as light as possible.
Oh yeah.
The prison of Socrates was a music club in the t-shirt and shorts beach town of Balboa.
Balboa?
Okay. Balboa.
Like Balboa.
Well, maybe.
As
Yeah.
in-
Is that you say that Balboa?
As
Oh,
in-
it probably would be
yeah.
Balboa.
Yeah.
Okay. The audition at the prison was marginal because the opening acts were usually marginal anyway, and he was hired for a weekend tryout. He said, "I now had my first job outside Knott's Berry Farm, which presented a particular difficulty. It was one thing to do 5 minutes at the birdcage.
I'm fucking like laughing already.
Yeah, it was one thing to do 5 minutes at the birdcage or 10 minutes at a hoot, quote unquote hoot, but it was another thing to do 20 minutes for paying customers. Furiously trying to expand the act before my 3-day gig, I threw in earnest readings of poets. So he would do T.S. Eliot and just a bunch of different guys like never heard of.
T.S. Eliot.
Yeah. But he would throw in little poetry readings because, like I said,
Awesome.
I'm going. They were playing. He was doing stuff at folk clubs at the time of the '60s. That was the big thing, and there weren't comedy clubs yet.
Yeah. Oh, like the Laugh, not the Laugh Factory, the store.
Yeah,
The store is
comedy.
like the first one.
So opening night, he stood in the parking lot behind the club, going over his material and warming up on the banjo, adjacent to garbage cans and blowing with beach sand. The parking lot was where the opening acts tuned up and rehearsed, as there was no place to practice out at the audience earshot. And I performed performing to a sparse crowd. And how did it go? He said, I have no idea. My only memories are the unsettling echo of chairs screeching on the concrete floor as patrons adjusted their seats. After the show, I was informed by my college friends that I had mispronounced the word incomparable. But by then,
I wonder how he said
yeah. So he had 2 credits by then, or he now had 2 credits: the birdcage and the prison of Socrates. So he was able to land intermittent jobs among them and the Ice House in Pasadena.
Oh, Ice House, yes.
Yeah. So at the Ice House, he faced a real nightclub audience and performed almost as frequently as he did at the Birdcage. 3 shows a night was the standard at these small clubs. Eventually, he integrated himself with enough venues that he wondered if he could possibly finance his life without the security of his steady job at Knott's Berry Farm. And yeah, the Ice House. Well, it was a converted ice house. I didn't know the Ice House was that old though.
Well, yeah, it's been around a long.
Well, I always hear about
time.
Joe Rogan talking about doing a set.
doing a set at
the Ice House.
Rogan, Tony Hinchcliffe, Brian Redband.
Yeah, he always talks about how much he loves the Ice House.
Yeah.
That's why I like kind of.
It's
thought it was
literally
interesting.
It's literally an old ice house. It's like literally what it is.
Yeah, so the local folk clubs thrived on single acts, and their Monday nights were reserved for budding talent. And stand-up comedy felt like an open door. It was possible to assemble a few minutes of material and be on stage that week, as opposed to standing in line with some mysterious world in Hollywood, getting no response, no phone call returned, and no opportunity to perform. And on Mondays, he could tour around Orange County, visit 3 clubs in one night, and be on stage live in front of an audience. And what he's talking about is like acting, like trying to make a name for himself acting, which I think he had kind of thought about at the time.
What was this year that you're talking about?
I don't have an exact year on
Okay.
this one, but it was the early '60s.
Yeah. Well, he has always
Well,
been.
it's probably around mid '60s actually.
Well, he's
Right
always been such a staple for me.
So it was probably mid '60s to it was probably mid '60s.
How old is Steve Martin?
I don't know now.
Yeah.
I'd have to look it up, but well, he was born in 1945.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But does it really matter?
No.
He's ageless, man.
Yeah, he really is, man.
Yeah. So
Dim burgers.
so one cool thing he said is if I flopped at the Paradox in Tustin, Tustin,
Tustin, yeah.
I might succeed an hour later at the Rouge en Noir. I found myself confining the magic to its own segment so I wouldn't be called a magician, even though the idea of doing comedy had sounded risky when I compared to the safety of doing trick after trick. I needed to be called a comedian. I discovered it was not magic I was interested in, but performing in general. And why? Because I was in competition with my father? No. Because I was aware of his interest in showbiz until years later? Was my ego out of control and looking for glory? I don't think so. I am fundamentally shy and still feel slightly embarrassed at disproportionate attention. My answer to the question is simple. Who wouldn't want to be in show business?
Well, we're doing it ourselves right now.
So he said, I looked around the birdcage and saw actors who had worked there 15 years and counting. And I knew it could be a trap for me. With some trepidation, I gave notice. And at the age of 21, 3 years after I had started at the birdcage, I slipped away almost unnoticed. And yeah, that's kind of crazy. Well, that's one of those things too. Is like people think about jobs, and it's always like you look at a job where like when you can just like leave and no one even fucking cares.
Right.
You're like, was that really a good job?
Well, like, and for me, like Steve Martin is I couldn't imagine the world without him.
No.
Like a comedy without him. Like think about The Man with Two Brains, which is his acting career. Like the Man with Two Brains, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, with like John Candy.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's I remember like the big thing that I keep going back to is him on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like we're just a couple wild and crazy guys.
So I wanted to share the story. This is actually if you do read the book Born Standing Up, this is actually the first chapter. So in the summer, and this was actually a year, I think around a year before he left the Birdcage Theater. So in the summer of '65, he was 20 years old, and he was in San Francisco driving up from
In
LA.
1965, he was 20 years old. Holy fuck!
And but he was lugging around his banjo and black hardshell prop case. So he was doing open mic nights, playing for free anywhere he could, and auditioning at comedy clubs or playing banjo on the street for tips.
Busking.
Yeah, and he'd sleep in either his VW van, camp out in a Golden Gate Park, or pay for a cheap hotel room. And at this point, he wasn't the refined comic we'd come to know. We were talking about that earlier ourselves. It takes time to really.
Well, we are
yourself.
still refining.
We are. So his act was as he puts it, cobbled together from the disparate universes of juggling, comedy, banjo playing, weird bits that he'd written in college, and magic tricks. He said, I was strictly Monday night quality, the night when traditionally anyone who could get up to perform would perform. All we entertainers knew Mondays were really audition nights for the club.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he was still untouched at the time by the rapidly changing fashion scene of the mid-'60s. He had short hair and wore conservative clothes, which didn't help him with the hippie crowds he was playing to. Like I said, he was playing at folk clubs. And his opening line at the time was, "Hello, I'm Steve Martin, and I'll be out of here in a minute." I got a lone chuckle. And let's see. At one point, he started singing. This is actually he was playing at a place called the Coffee and Confusion in San Francisco, in the mid-'60s. And so I'm just telling this little story like he told. And at one point, he started singing a song that would go on to become a famous bit of his. And it was like, be courteous and kind and forgiving. And I'm going to play that right now.
Go ahead.
Be courteous, kind, and forgiving. Be gentle and peaceful each day. Be warm and human and grateful. And have a good thing to say. Be thoughtful and trustful and childlike. Be witty and happy and wise. Be honest and love all your neighbors. Be obsequious, purple and clairvoyant. Be pompous, obese, and eat cactus. Be dull and boring and omnipresent. Criticize things you don't know about. Be oblong and have your knees removed. Be tasteless, rude, and offensive. Live in a swamp and be three-dimensional. Put a live chicken in your underwear. Get all excited and go to a yawning festival. Okay, everybody. Be courteous, kind, and forgiving. Be courteous, kind, and forgiving. Good. Be gentle and peaceful each day. Be gentle and peaceful each day. Be warm and human and grateful. Be warm and human and grateful. And have a good thing to say. And have a good thing to say. Be thoughtful and trustful and childlike. Everybody on this. Be thoughtful and trustful and childlike. Be witty and happy and wise. Be witty and happy and wise. Be honest and love all your neighbors. Be honest and love all your neighbors. Be obsequious, purple, and clairvoyant. Let them hear you outside. Be obsequious, purple, and clairvoyant. Be pompous, obese, and eat cactus. Everybody sing. Be pompous, obese, and eat cactus. Be dull and boring and omnipresent. Be dull and boring and omnipresent. Criticize things you don't know about. Criticize things you don't know about. Be oblong and have your knees removed. Be oblong and have your knees removed. Ladies only, be tasteless, rude, and offensive. Now the men, live in a swamp and be three-dimensional. Live in a swamp, be three-dimensional. Everybody, put a live chicken in your underwear. Put a live chicken in your underwear. Go into a closet and suck eggs. Go into a closet and suck eggs.
I'm over here laughing. It's good stuff.
Yeah, sorry,
man.
I had to play that full song just because it's
Put
just
a live chicken in your underwear.
and that's actually what he calls it is a grandmother song. Because when he did that bit in that club, he told the audience that his grandmother taught him.
Oh.
And I really wanted to do this part just because in the book he says and you're gonna love this, is when he was doing that show, he added ladies only, never make love to Bigfoot.
Oh
He's
shit,
like,
really?
Men only. Hello, my name is Bigfoot.
Oh shit.
So I just kind of liked that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to tell you that one.
That's hilarious.
I thought you'd enjoy that. And it'll be it's just a fun one of his, honestly.
Well, his whole take on comedy is really unique.
Yeah.
It's really unique. It's like you think about like Hedberg, Hicks.
Yeah.
They're all
He was very original.
Yeah, very unique.
And I haven't even gotten to the part about him talking about like being an original like comic. And
Yeah. Well, like I said, like my big thing with him is like the movies.
Yeah.
Like that's my big experience with Steve Martin.
Oh, that's most people's experience.
Yeah.
They just don't. Well, because he honestly quit stand up when he was at his highest.
Yeah.
When he was at his peak, he quit.
And I wish I could think of the name of his band.
I can't remember. what he's currently doing with
he's got a bluegrass band.
I think he toured. He does it with a few different people or a few different bands.
He's got a bluegrass
Well, even with the one he did with Martin Short, the show, he had his bluegrass band with him, or a bluegrass band.
Steve Martin and Martin Short, man, like those.
Yeah,
guys.
if you haven't seen it on Netflix, it's a night you're sure to forget. It's really fucking good.
So, those
two play off each other really well.
Those two guys together,
and they're doing another one right now.
I'm sorry, guys, listeners. I'm like over here chuckling. I'm just like, sorry. Go ahead.
So I'm gonna continue on. So he continued to attend Long Beach State College, and he was studying philosophy. And he became fixated on studying, and he was now an A student actually.
Not surprising,
right? He got really into. He just got really into being being in school. You know, it was also it helped with something he was into because he really loved philosophy a lot. So some people would fall asleep at night listening to music. He would fall asleep listening to like Lenny Bruce.
Oh, nice.
And from this, he led him to discover that comedy could evolve.
Right. Oh, like that's one of the reasons I love like Sam Kinison. It's like Rogan said, like, oh, this is comedy too. Mm-hmm. This is comedy.
Exactly.
Oh. Like this is comedy too.
Yeah. And we've talked about it before, like just where comedy is at right now.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think me and you are both looking for that really like kind of comic who's really doing something that no one else is doing.
My favorite right now is Chris D'Elia.
Yeah.
That he's my favorite right now.
Mine is probably Jim Jeffries.
Okay.
At least I think his last special wasn't nearly as good as like his previous two. But he's still putting out some really good shit.
Well, and after after D'Elia for me would probably be Gaffigan.
Gaffigan, yeah. But I'm always looking for the person who's like going to push, comedy. Yeah. And it's funny how we talk about pushing comedy and everything. And it's like, and people, and I think somebody would be like, if you want to fucking push comedy, like, why don't you just do it yourself?
Well, we're kind of doing it.
We're not comedians.
Not even close.
I mean, I know if I was to do comedy, I know exactly what I would want to do, which is definitely like a social commentary type comedy, and really like kind of, I don't know. I don't want to get into it.
Well, this
isn't the place.
the one and only joke I've ever written, I didn't put it down on paper.
Yeah, but you told it before.
This is my joke. I would like to dress up as Jeffrey Dahmer for Halloween, but that would
be in bad taste.
It'd be in bad taste.
So let's see where I got next. So on campus, he experienced 2 moments of illumination, and he would have to write. The first one was that he would have to write everything in the act, like in an act himself. There could be nothing that made the audience feel they weren't seeing something utterly new. And he didn't know, but he didn't know how to write comedy at all.
Steve Martin not knowing how to write
here's
comedy?
the thing. Some of his best one-liners were all like, he kind of stole from like gag books and other people's routines. Because he just didn't know. He got a lot of stuff from like comedy magicians.
Okay.
Because that's the way he thought of himself, as he was a comic magician. And after several years of working up his week 20 minutes, he was now starting from almost zero.
Fuck.
But he finally realized, he was like, look, if I'm gonna do something good, I need to be original.
Yeah.
And I need to do my own material. So he came up with several schemes for developing material. I laugh in life, he thought. So why not observe what it is that makes me laugh? And if he did spot something that was funny, he decided not to just describe it as something happening to someone else, but to translate into the first person. So it was happening to me. Like, I didn't walk into a bar. I did. I didn't want it to appear that others were nuts. I wanted it to appear that
a guy didn't walk into a bar. I did.
He didn't want it to appear that others were nuts. He wanted it to appear that he was nuts. Yeah, or that I was nuts. Another method was to idly and abstractly dream up bits. Singing in a science class, he stared at the periodic table of elements that hung behind the professor. And that weekend, he went on stage at the Ice House and announced, "And now I would like to do a dramatic reading of the periodic table of elements."
Dude, that's one of my... That's one of my favorite Martin bits.
He said, "I said that bit didn't last long."
But it's funny though.
Yeah. Well, who would think to do something like that?
It's funny. Like, have you ever heard that bit?
No.
It's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, but he thought to be like, oh, let me do a bit where I'm like, I'm gonna read the periodic table of elements.
I've completely.
But you know what? And he does it, and it's fucking funny.
It is. Like, I've heard that entire bit.
And then he was taking a logic class, and he found out that Lewis Carroll, who wrote like Alice in Wonderland, wrote logic textbooks and included argument forms based on the syllogy normally presented in logic books. It was normally presented in logic books this way: all men are mortal. Socrates is a man, and therefore Socrates is mortal. That's like a logic problem. And I'm gonna go in a couple more. So, but Carroll's were more convoluted, and they struck Steve more as funny in a new way. So babies are illogical. 2, nobody is despised who can manage a crocodile. And 3, illogical persons are despised. Therefore, babies cannot manage crocodiles.
Oh my god!
Right? That's pretty cool. So absolutely logical.
I'm sorry.
Yet they were still funny. And so Lewis Carroll, Steve kind of expanded on Lewis Carroll's delivery and of what comedy could be. And he began closing his show by announcing, "I'm not going home tonight. I'm going to Banana Land, a place where only 2 things are true. Only 2 things. 1, all chairs are green, and 2, no chairs are green." He loved implying that the one thing that he believed in was a contradiction.
I'm literally over here laughing.
Yeah, I know. But it was cool. Like, that's actually something I learned about comedy. It was like, whoa. Like, he took comedy from a logic class.
Yeah. Like Steve Martin is one of these people that I will put him in the same vein as like Mitch Hedberg.
Oh, definitely.
As like being like clever.
They just have a mind that works differently than us.
Exactly. Like having this like intelligence that works on a different
like he looks at it like we look at a banana and we see a banana. He looks at a banana and he sees like something comedic, I'm doing a horrible.
Next time on a boat, I'm reaching for a lime.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
But we look at. I think what I'm trying to say is we look at one thing one way, and he looks at one thing another way. It's like as it's something that's funny,
right?
Or I can take this and make this funny.
Like how like Steve Martin in particular, like along with Mitch Hedberg. Same thing with like Robin Williams. Like you look at something and like, what's funny about this? Yeah. Without even thinking about it. It's like,
well, like I said, we talk about like doing the periodic table elements. Come on.
And I know that bit.
You got to figure Andy Kaufman.
Well, Andy Kaufman, yeah,
he was something different, man, too.
Like Lotka, think of it very much.
This is definitely a very, very much an Andy Kaufman style.
Yeah, think of it very much.
Yeah,
and like his whole thing is like Andy Kaufman in particular, like he.
Or when Andy Kaufman would like I think one thing I didn't mention was I'm trying to think if this was right, or if this is something else I like was watching or reading about was some of his bits were lip syncing maybe.
Yes, it was. He did Elvis.
Well, I mean, Kaufman did that.
Well, Kaufman did Elvis.
Yeah. I'm trying to think that Steve Martin did something like that. No, I'm thinking of like television. I'm thinking actually, it's funny. I'm thinking of a episode on YouTube from the channel Yesterworld, or not Yesterworld, Defunctland, where he talked about he was talking about the Muppets actually when they first started doing the first show that Jim Henson ever did was called Sam and Friends, and it got to be insanely popular. And what they would do actually was lip sync like songs.
Okay.
And with the Muppets. And they did that for a long time before Jim Henson was finally like, I'm going to write some original stuff. It's funny. I can't believe my mind went there. It's crazy. Man, so much stuff mixes together.
Well, because we're talking about comedy at this point.
That's another thing we should do is, we have so many people want to cover. Like Jim Henson would actually be a really good one.
Dude.
Although I don't feel it could do nearly, I'd probably go to the Defunctland because he's doing a 6-part series. I think it's 6 or 8-part miniseries on Jim Henson. And I'd be like, I'm just going to rip everything off this. Well, and I really actually wouldn't want to do that. I'd be like, you know what, you want to hear about Jim Henson and his story? watch that.
Well, my big thing is like when we do like a biography on
Yeah.
somebody, I like take a lot in, but I try to not hit the same exact points. Like I try
Well,
to.
I mean, I'm reading off of a lot of this. I am reading off the book, and I'm definitely using it as a guide. But I'm trying to put in my own words.
Exactly.
But for the most part, I'm following like his timeline because it just works well.
The book you have is in the words of
This
Steve
book is
Martin.
this book is fantastic for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm reading, I'm going by the book, but it's just because it's really well written and really well done. And if I had more time, I definitely try to write out a script, but I don't have the time. But anyway, we going off on a tangent.
Anyway,
so the second illuminating moment to him was when he met a girl named Nina Goldblatt. And she would go on later, like, I don't know how long her now. She was actually a dancer on a show called The Mickey Finn Show.
I know what you're talking about.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I think she was doing a Vegas show at one point.
Well, the Mickey Finn Show was a Vegas show.
Oh, okay.
It was
Tell me about it then.
It was on TV, but it was like imagine like think about like the girls like in the big
like showgirls.
The big costumes.
They're the showgirls.
And they would dance like this, and their costumes would go like this. You guys can't see me, but like the costumes, like they would do.
Like the go-go,
yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, mid 60s type stuff. So, but she became like, I think he ended up dating her for a little while. And then they just
Steve Martin.
And then they became friends later on. But he wrote her a letter once where he was just talking to her about his life, and then he added, "I've decided my act is going to go avant-garde. It is the only way to do what I want."
Avant-garde.
Yeah, avant-garde. And but she would actually go on to, I think, like actually right before I stopped, and I'll get in. I'll actually when I do the second part, she's gonna be a big part of it.
You said fart.
Yeah, sorry.
Farts are funny.
So, at the Ice House, he met the comedian George McKelvey. Sorry, George had an actual career. He was in Aspen, Colorado during spring break and about to work a small folk club when he broke his leg skiing, and he asked if Steve Martin could fill in for him, and he generously offered me all of his salary. And he said, I think it was $300 for the 2 weeks, which would be more than I'd ever earned anywhere, anytime. And he was 21 years old in March of 1967 when he headed for the notorious ski resort. I love how he said notorious.
Notorious.
Well, Aspen was a little different then.
Well, they probably had some fun.
And so the nightclub he was playing was called the Abbey Cellar on Galena Street. And it was like a basement level like club in the middle of the town, and it was hard to find even for them. And they had to go out on the street to like kind of drum up business, and they had these like little kind of business cards that said Steve Martin / John McClure Entertainment Extraordinaire.
Extraordinaire.
There's actually a picture. I'll show you that. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Extraordinaire.
So he was doing his own what he described as a triptych of a show of banjo playing, comedy, and magic. And one evening at the Abbey Cellar, he had his first experience with a serious heckler. And I loved the story so I had to include it. So this heckler stood up and said, "Steve, you think this is funny?" and threw a glass of red wine on him. So later on, and so he got the guy thrown out, of course.
Oh yeah.
Well, actually, the bartender and I think one of the comedians like threw this guy out. And so later, he developed a few defensive lines to use against the unruly, as he puts it.
The unruly.
And I hope if any comedian is listening now, please use this because I think it's actually a great way to deal with a heckler. This is I remember my first beer. He was probably one of the first people.
I've heard that before.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
Well, he might have stolen it from Sal.
Yeah.
But I think the best thing he did was he would lower his voice and continue with his act, talking almost inaudibly. The audience couldn't hear the show, and they would shut the heckler up on their own.
I'm sorry, I'm just over here laughing.
So I'm sorry that this is going on, and I think this is really funny. I think we should
This guy's an asshole.
This guy's an asshole. If you actually want to hear me, you need to.
I'm gonna keep telling jokes.
You need to berate this guy and shut him up.
I'm gonna keep telling jokes, but this guy.
Hey, asshole! Shut the fuck up.
I literally applauded us right now.
Oh, that was fun. That was just fun. I'm glad I put that part in. So after 2 weeks in Aspen, he went back to Los Angeles feeling like an anointed prophet, taking his friends aside and burping out the new philosophy. Because he's starting to get more into the like kind of beatnik folk culture.
Oh, right. Okay.
He's having all these debates with people and philosophical discussions, and he's starting to try drugs. In fact, there's a whole story in here about how he did these poppers, as they put it, about like they're supposed to be good for sex. I actually ended up looking them up at one point. I'm not going to get into like what they are and all that because yeah. So, but he continued to so after this, so he continued to pursue his studies and half believed that he might try for a doctorate in philosophy and become a teacher.
I've actually heard stories about him.
He said he toyed with the idea for several semesters, but he concluded that not to continue with comedy would place a question in his mind that would nag him for the rest of his life. Could I ever have a career in performing? Yeah. That's one thing I think about.
Could you imagine Steve Martin being your teacher in like philosophy?
Yeah, I know, right? That'd be kind of interesting. But I mean, well, he would have been like Steve Martin. He would have just been like, Professor Martin.
Professor Martin, yeah. But he would have a
gray-haired in 1970.
He would have this very unique way to teach you.
Maybe.
I really feel like if he was a teacher, he would take it on as the same way that he did like his comedy. Mm-hmm. Like he would be so unique.
Oh, definitely.
Like he would bring it to you to where you absorbed it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So soon he felt his career in the irrational world of creativity not only made sense but had moral purpose. So he was living.
That speaks to what I was just saying.
So he felt he was living several lives at once. He was a student at Long Beach State. He sometimes filled in at the Birdcage Theater and at night performed in various folk clubs. Get a little turn the page. So by then he's like most of his work was in Westwood, Long Beach State College, 40 miles away. Seemed like Siberia to him. So he transferred to his third college, UCLA, so he could be closer to the action, as he put it. And he took several courses there, and one was an acting class, and then also a course in television writing. And he continued his studies in philosophy. But he became overwhelmed, and just with like logic classes, because he got really into like taking like being a logic major. And in fact, he took like a logic class, like it was like advanced symbolic logic.
Oh my god!
But they didn't use the same terms as like his other college, so he had to take
advanced symbolic.
Yeah,
logic.
So because he liked the sound of like being an advanced logic major. So he actually had to take a Logic 101 class at the same time he was taking Advanced Logic.
Who's he, Mr. Spock?
So he was, well, I know, right? That's what I kept thinking. But he was just, it was overwhelming him. So he was shocked to find that he couldn't keep up, and he had reached his math limit as well as his philosophy limit. So he said, I abruptly changed my major to theater.
Theater?
Because he realized that he was now investing in no other, but in doing so, he realized that he was now investing in no other future than show business. Turned out to be a good decision.
Yeah, I would say so.
Turned out to be a good decision.
I would say so. Have you ever seen The Man with Two Brains?
Probably. You keep talking about it, man.
Yeah.
We're not going. This is not about his acting career. Stop.
Gotta watch that movie. Dude.
So by then he was living rent free over the garage of a mansion in the exclusive area of Bel Air, thanks to the generosity of Randy Sparks and his wife Diane, who they owned a theater that he would play at.
A theater?
Yeah, shut up. Fuck you, man.
It's just fun.
I keep saying fuck you.
Go ahead.
So among the crowd of singers, musicians, and other non-singers, he got to know a girl who was a non-singer and a non-musician, and her name was Melissa. And friends would get to know her as Mitzi, who was 20 years old. And so after she was with someone, but he ended up like getting her after a few weeks. So after several weeks of courtship. And her dad was named Dalton Trumbo, who actually wrote Spartacus.
What?
Yeah, he was a screenwriter. He wrote Spartacus, Lonely Are the Brave, Hawaii, Exodus, and Papillon.
Whoa. I am Spartacus.
Yeah.
I am Spartacus.
Yeah, and he was notorious for being one of the Hollywood 10, a group of writers and directors who were blacklisted during the Red Scare of the early 50s.
The Red Scare.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So he was like, the what was his name? The guy who was like going after all of, like, you're a commie type thing.
Okay.
McCarthy. Like McCarthy.
McCarthyism.
Yeah, he was part of that. Well, because there was a lot of times where during that time where a lot of actors and screenwriters and everybody got blacklisted. So during his congressional hearing, Trumbo challenged the right of his inquisitors to interrogate him, prompting a frustrated committee member to scream, "You are out of order, sir! You are out of order!"
This whole court is out of order.
That was probably actually where they took it from, honestly.
Yeah.
So, where did I get after this? I got to flip a few pages. Sorry.
This whole court is out of order.
Yeah, but Steve Martin. So he got to be with her. He was with her, and like he got to really learn about like kind of the counterculture and the rest of the world. I guess her dad would like smoke marijuana, but apparently he never smoked it right.
Dare.
He'd smoke it like a cigar. So she's like, yeah, he'd smoke a whole one and he never get stoned because he was trying to like cut down on his drinking, but apparently he was a huge drunk too. But and Steve Martin, he would like go over, but he would go over there all the time for dinner because her mom would be like, yeah,
And
like
he had
anytime
the-
you guys want to eat,
he had the
so they didn't have
weed
any
pipe.
money, so like they'd go over there for dinner.
He had the weed pipe.
Yeah. Well, and Steve Martin would, he was just a horny fucking guy at the time. Honestly, he was just a horny fucking dude. And Mitzi was a photographer, and so she would do like a lot of promotional shots of him at the time, of like with flowers and all that stuff. And he actually said Mitzi became my official photographer. But at this point, like the war referred to, like the Vietnam War, was kind of was really kind of getting at everything. And it scared him a lot, actually. And at first he was exempt because he was in college, from the draft. But when the college deferment lifted, he became a IY or 1Y. I don't really know.
I think it's 1Y.
1Y. Unacceptable because of he became unacceptable because of migraine headaches.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah. Which he had exaggerated.
Well, I would exaggerate.
So he was definitely kind of a bit of a draft dodger, I guess.
Well,
I
would be too.
That'd be the one thing I'd say. But you know what? If we were in that same situation, we totally would have done the same thing. So you know what? You can't be like, this guy's a draft dodger. It's like, you know what? You in his situation, you would have done the same fucking thing because you're afraid to go to war and die for something you didn't think was right.
Fuck that. Like,
So
Anyway.
So the definition of 1Y, or was it 1Y?
1Y.
1Y was tightened, and he was moved up to 1A. And the draft went to a lottery, and he drew a middling number. And as his number approached, the Army went to all volunteer. So he got.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so he got lucky getting in the war. Of course he's happy.
Well, like our generation came real close to that. They almost reinstated the draft when we were in high school. But continue.
Yeah. So next thing was her dad. So Mitzi's dad, he wrote a screenplay for a movie called The Fixer, starring Alan Bates.
That's been actually remade.
Has it?
Yeah.
I didn't know about this movie. So anyway, he was trying to say like, hey, come and like hang out with me, and it was in Budapest. So Mitzi joined him, and she was whisked off for the duration of the film. And after he'd received several charming letters from her and then noticed a lag in regularity of their arrival, Mitzi sent him a gentle and direct Dear John letter. Yeah. She'd been so this is kind of funny, actually. She'd been swept away by the director John Frankenheimer, who 20 years later tried and failed to seduce his wife, Steve Martin's wife. Or as he put it, my then wife, the actress Victoria Tennant, whom he was directing in a movie. So Mitzi was simply too alluring to be left alone in a foreign country, and I was too hormonal to be left in Hollywood. Incidentally, Frankenheimer died a few years ago, but it was not I.
She
who
was
killed
just
him.
like too hot to.
I like how you put like instantly Frankenheimer died a few years ago, but it was not I who killed him. Because it's kind of like, yeah, that guy was a fucking asshole.
But
type
it wasn't
thing.
me.
It's like, you know what? Yeah, this guy tried to steal my wife, so it's like he died. I just want to let you know that. It's kind of it's oh, you know, yeah, just realizing now that's kind of like the last like fuck you. It really kind of is, right?
Like he was like, it wasn't me, but I'm glad he's dead.
Yeah, he didn't really. Say, well, yeah, he didn't say it, but he kind of said it.
Was saying it wasn't me. Like, yeah, if I would have, if I could.
But he did try to fucking pick up my wife, so.
So fuck that guy.
Yeah, fuck that guy. Fuck you, John Frankenheimer.
So we're gonna draw it to a close.
Yeah, this is actually, yeah, it's funny how it ended up at pretty much almost exactly 2 hours.
Yeah. Thank you for doing the awesome research.
Well,
man.
I'm really just reading what he wrote.
Well,
honestly, I don't want to take credit for research when I just kind of. I mean, I'm putting it like I'm narrowing it down. It's more of like almost a book report in a way.
Here's the best way to put it: is you're narrating the story.
Yeah.
Because like you and me and Josh,
I'm reading a few things. You know, I realized I'm actually reading a lot less verbatim than I thought I would.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy about that.
Well, like,
and I'm glad you've been able to throw in a little bit too.
Oh yeah, and between the three of us that do this show on a regular basis,
yeah,
we have different styles.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yeah, so
That's
I
what
really
keeps it interesting.
I really enjoyed what you put together tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, and then next episode is the conclusion of this, right?
Yeah, we're gonna do part 2.
Yeah, and then next month.
Like I said, this is all about. It's really only about his stand-up career.
Right.
I mean, we could do like a 3 or 4-parter, including his acting career, but I'm not doing that. I'm going just into his stand-up.
Well,
what I mean, it's amazing that I have such a great resource in his book because it is just about his stand-up.
Yeah. What's the name of the book again?
It's called Born Standing Up.
That's cool.
And
man.
if you're interested, if you like Steve Martin, like it all, like this has been a really easy, like fun read. Like even just reading it, it's like really easy to read it. Very much.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes me want to get some of his like regular books because he wrote a Shop Girl. I've never seen the movie. It actually got turned into a movie, but he's written a few fiction books.
Okay.
He's a great writer. You know.
Well, so far I'm seeing that.
Yeah. I think even if you were to read this book, you're like, oh man, this is like so easy to read. And then like even just reading it to like make notes, I feel like I could have like read this book within like 2 days.
That's awesome.
Because it's just that easy to read.
That's awesome.
It's nice.
So our next one is going to be the
next month you're talking about, next episode.
The conclusion of Steve Martin.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the month we're going to do Robin Williams.
Yeah.
That's going to be good.
End of next month.
Yeah, and
we're probably thinking that's going to be a 2-parter also.
Yeah. And we've got stuff in between.
Yeah.
So enjoy, and thank you for listening to Nerdy Bones.
Mm-hmm.
So, and say it with me, Nick.
Yeah.
Nerdy Bones.
And we're out.